Benjamin Sesko is set to join Manchester United in a deal worth up to 85 million euros. Leipzig will push a narrative that this can be up to 90 million euros, but that will include a friendly, yet to be determined when to be played. So it's 85 million euros plus a 5 million euro evaluation that they put on a friendly, Stefan. So that is, yeah, sure. If you think a game like that is worth that much money, I'll give it to you. Still, this is the second biggest sale in club history for Leipzig. It's only Guardiola is more, who was sold for 90 million euros to Man City.
Mm.
And that is, in my opinion, an enormous amount of money that they're getting here, right? I think the talks with Arsenal ultimately failed because of the personal demands of the player. They then moved on to Victor Gyökeres, but that was a smaller fee, right? Like I think the talks there were around 70 million euros, and I'm actually surprised in some ways that Leipzig were able to hold on to the player and like not sell him to Arsenal and then actually getting a larger fee. Although I suspect this is partly due because Newcastle United also came in, so that they were able to jack up the price because of that with two Premier League clubs coming in and then Šeško choosing or picking Man United over Newcastle. Poor Newcastle, by the way. Like, this is the second time this has happened to them with a Bundesliga club. First it was Hugo Ekitike, and now it's Benjamin Sesko. That, of course, I think has implications too, because I think if Newcastle can't pick up a new striker, Alexander Isak isn't going anywhere, right? So if you're a Liverpool fan listening to this, and I've been told to people close to Liverpool that as for now, unless there's any sort of movement, they will not make another bid for Alexander Isak because there's just no point. Newcastle will just straight up reject it. But we're talking about Benjamin Sesko, his move to Man United. Exciting. I think he's a great player. I was going through some of the texts that I've written over the last couple of years on him. I interviewed him once for the Substack, interviewed him once for Transfermarkt. A lot of times there's these really crazy comparisons to Erling Haaland, which I think is not fair towards him. He's not that kind of player, only because he comes out of the Salzburg Academy. Doesn't mean, you should compare him to that. He himself really liked the comparison to his favorite player growing up was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That's who he models himself after. I think it's actually also a really good comparison because like Zlatan, he isn't quite, Zlatan also took some time to be the finished product, right? After Malmo at Ajax, there was a couple of years there where he really didn't look great, and really needed to develop his game to become more rounded. Put together all the great tools that he had, very athletic tools, that Jesko also has. Jesko, in his free time, plays basketball to kind of round up his skills, right? That's where his area ability is unbelievable, both with his feet and also with his head. So there's a lot there to like. The only concern I have is his destination, which is Man United, and the lack of patience that club has shown with players that need still an extra little bit of development. And I don't even mean like terms of development from like, oh yeah, he's a great Bundesliga scorer, what can he do in the Premier League? He hasn't even been a consistent Bundesliga scorer. Like I would have actually said he isn't even like a finished Bundesliga player yet. And I know in England the demands are different. Some would say more difficult, and that's true at times because strikers face more different environments in terms of how teams defend. And that's, that is where I'm sort of a little worried about this. And the other worry I have, I went through United squad. They have several strikers. Yes, they might sell Højlund, but when we talked about this last year quite a bit, Cesco often played in a two-man attack with Openda, which worked sometimes, but oftentimes felt like the two were actually standing in each other's way. And I'm worried that United will also employ a two-player attack, and I'm not sure that actually suits him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see how he fits into Manchester United. The interesting thing is that you're right, he's nothing like Erling Haaland. I actually think he's more similar to Marcus Rashford, who they've just moved on from to Barcelona, in the sense that he has the kind of physique of a number nine, but he obviously tends to prefer playing off the left, cutting inside. Can drift happy to drift out wide, where he can get more space to run at players. So it'll be interesting to see how he does fit into that team. I think theoretically speaking, he could play alongside Hoyland. They've obviously got Xerxes there as well, who can kind of play a kind of forward role as well, and a kind of front two maybe. So it gives Man United a bit of options. I gotta say though, like you got to hand it to Sesko's agent because this guy must be the hardest working guy in the transfer window this summer.
Elvis.
Good old Elvis, because I mean, they've been linked. He was linked to Chelsea. He was linked to Arsenal. Obviously, that didn't work out. Linked to Newcastle. That didn't work out. And now he's ended up at Manchester United. And I think the main reason between why Arsenal stepped away from it and why Man United ended up getting him is that in England they're talking about reported salary of about 500,000 or 600,000 euros a week, which, just to put that into perspective, is roughly what Harry Kane makes at Bayern Munich, if not more. And it's probably about twice Arsenal's highest earner, which is apparently Kai Havertz, who makes just under
Mm,
300,000 a week. So we're basically talking about Man United offering this guy, not even if you put the transfer fee to one side, they're offering him a salary that's twice Arsenal's best player. It's crazy. It's crazy numbers. It really is crazy numbers. And I think it speaks to the nature of the market right now, Manu. There's just not
mm,
that many good number nines right now. But I think Man United probably just took a look around and thought, we have to kind of, if we're going to go for this guy, we have to kind of go all in.
yeah.
That's just the way that Leipzig do business. They don't kind of, scrimp and scrape. They don't make compromises. They don't let players run their contract down or give in to player demands and things like that. They always extract as much money as they can out of these kind of dealings. And I guess Man United kind of weighed it all up and said, well, this guy's worth it. And I think in a way, they could be right. I think he's got the
Mm,
potential to be a world class forward. I think he's shown that at times in the Bundesliga. Um, and, I think he could go on and become a really, really good player for Man United. Still very, very young. And he's got all the kind of attributes that should do him very well in the Premier League. But equally, I think you could probably still equally say it's a lot of money to spend on a player who, as you said, is not the finished article, will need
mm,
time to develop, who, as you said, hasn't been groundbreaking or hasn't kind of really set a standard in the Bundesliga in terms of goal scoring. I actually checked before we start recording here. He's got one more goal since he started at Leipzig. He's got one more league goal than Andre Kramaric at Hoffenheim, who, as we all
mm,
know, is about 64 years old. He's level with Dennis Undav, who missed a significant number of games with injury. One
mm,
less than Omar Marmoush, who played about 20 games fewer than Sesko. And notably, he's about the same number of games as Louis Openda, but scored 6 fewer goals. So
yeah.
if I was Louis Openda, I'd be probably wondering why Sesko gets to move for this crazy bit of money, even though Openda actually has a better goal per game ratio and more goals for Leipzig since since Sesko joined the club. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, it's not Erling Haaland. It's not Jude Bellingham. Um, it's not even Christian Pulisic in the sense that, like, we've seen so many kind of world class players to do their thing in the Bundesliga, then get picked up by the Premier League club, and
mm,
then everyone says, okay, fair enough. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. At least we got to see the very best of him at the Bundesliga. He can go off and we wish him well.
yeah.
I just don't think we've seen that from Sesko. And, I saw a lot of people kind of noting that he'll probably end up at Man United for a similar fee to Jadon Sancho. And I got to say, Jadon Sancho was a far, far more complete player when he left for Man United than Sesko
Mm,
is now. That's not to say that Sesko won't be a success. I think there were mitigating circumstances that led to why Jadon Sancho hasn't worked at Man United. Um, and I think Sesko could absolutely work at Man United. Of course, he can. But I think Man United fans maybe have to bear in mind that they're not picking up Erling Haaland here. Not even picking up Christopher Nkunku. They're picking up a player who is young, needs time to develop, needs to work under a head coach who knows how to get the best out of him. And if that draws too many unwanted comparisons to Rasmus Højlund, then tough, because that's probably the scenario we're in here, where Man United have once again gone out, spent a lot of money on a relatively unproven striker, hoping that he'll be a world class player in years to come. But we'll see what happens, Manu. We wish him well. Obviously,
Yeah.
he obviously had great moments in the Bundesliga, but I think Leipzig will be laughing to the bank on Friday.